They all laughed at the poor dishwasher. But I never expected her incredible transformation. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The laughter echoed in my ears like a haunting melody, sharp and piercing. I stood there in the bustling restaurant, surrounded by the clinking of glasses and the sizzling stoves, my heart racing. I could feel the heat on my cheeks as my hands trembled beneath the thick rubber gloves. There she was, Josie the dishwasher. Her eyes, usually full of light, were clouded with exhaustion and a hint of disbelief. How could anyone laugh at someone like her? She worked tirelessly, scrubbing away every plate, every mug. It wasn't just the grease she cleaned. It was our mess, our failures, and she did it without a word of complaint, hidden in the shadows. But on that day when she slipped on some spilled sauce and fell, the laughter erupted like a thunderstorm. Look at her. Someone cackled. The clumsy dishwasher. The words cut through me. I wanted to scream to shield her from their ridicule. Josie tried to laugh it off, but her smile was shaky, fragile. I could see the hurt in the crinkle of her brows, the tightness in her shoulders. Background? Felt all too heavy. Josie had lost her family a few years back. A car accident claimed her parents, leaving her with a pitiful inheritance that barely made ends meet. I had watched her struggle, each day toiling hard not just to survive but to keep her head above water. And through all of this she sensed the hidden longing in her heart, a dream of a different life. But life isn't fair. Takes and it leaves scars. I remembered the nights we shared on her tiny balcony, wrapped in blankets talking about our hopes. She often said, "Someday they'll see me." Things escalated quickly after that fall. I should have checked in on her, but fear gripped my chest. What could I say? Instead, I watched from the sidelines. Over the next few days, her spirit dimmed under the weight of their laughter. Each day I saw her work harder as if to prove them wrong. Sunken eyes, clenched fists, it electrified the air around her. Then, something unexpected happened. The lunch rush came in, and amidst the chaos I saw Josie. She was cleaning a stack of plates, but she wasn't just scrubbing. She was dancing. It wasn't the stiff, restrained movement of a worker but a wild, free-spirited kind of sway. Her laughter bubbled up over the clattering dishes, a melody of empowerment. Her hair swung like a banner, and for the first time I felt the shift. But just as she twirled, a shadow crossed my path. A stranger walked in, his eyes locked on her. I could feel the air crackle with tension. Who was he? Why was he watching her like that? As everything unfolded, I tightened my grip on the counter, my heart thudding against my ribs. Josie stopped, the transformative moment hanging in the air like a delicate thread. I could feel the crowd drawing in their breath, holding on to this shifting spell. What would happen next? Would they laugh at her again? Or would this stranger change everything? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As I stood frozen behind the counter, the tension enveloping the restaurant turned palpable. Josie's laughter fell back into silence, her cheeks flushed from the surprise. The stranger, a tall man with a leather jacket, approached slowly as if navigating through the thick air of judgment that had settled over us. His presence was magnetic. Even the murmurs of the dining crowd faded into hushed whispers. I watched Josie's smile falter, the weight of uncertainty overshadowing the moment that was supposed to be hers. She looked up at the stranger, eyes wide, a flicker of hope battling against the shadows of doubt that had come to define her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, concern lacing his voice. It was the first genuine tone she had received since the laughter erupted days ago. For a brief moment I witnessed something shift in her posture, her spine straightened, a hint of the old Josie re-emerging. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her bravado. He chuckled softly, not mockingly but with warmth. "You're much better than fine. I've never seen anyone dance like that while washing dishes." He gestured to the pile of plates, a subtle invitation for her to reclaim her moment. For an instant I believed in the magic of kindness. The other workers, initially drawn into the crowd just to gawk, began to murmur amongst themselves, something sparking in their own hearts. Maybe they were beginning to see her really see her. "Who are you?" Josie asked, curiosity shimmering through her uncertainty. "I'm a talent scout," he replied. "I've been watching you from afar. You have something special, something they can't see." He paused, gauging her reaction. "I want to help you find your path." The laughter and jeers momentarily faded into the background as Josie blinked slowly, her world shaking on its axis. "Help me? Why?" "Because everyone deserves a chance to be seen and heard, even against the noise," he answered, his eyes sincere. But the noise was still there. I felt it in the way my heart raced, the fear that this transient kindness would only shatter the frail wall of resilience she had built. The risk of hope was terrifying. Josie cast her gaze toward the floor, biting her lip as if she were weighing the consequences. The tension in the air had changed, and yet I could see the doubt clinging to her every word. "I don't know if I can." Suddenly, the kitchen door swung open and Jamie, one of the cooks known for his harsh words, barged in, his eyes narrowing at the scene unfolding. "What's going on? Are you literally dancing now?" he sneered, arms crossed defiantly. "Why don't you just do your job?" The atmosphere shifted back with a vengeance, like a blanket pulled too tightly over a smoldering fire. I felt a flicker of anger rise in me, a desire to defend her. My throat tightened, but Josie surprised me. She lifted her chin defiantly, her voice barely above a whisper but steady. "I am doing my job, Jamie. But that doesn't mean I can't dream." The man shifted back slightly, a look of surprise mixed with admiration on his face. It was a small act of bravery, a tiny flicker in the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. I felt hope twist within me, but Jamie's eyes festered with disdain. "Dreaming won't pay the bills, Josie. You're wasting your time," he spat, but her small smile remained, defiance dancing at its edges that evening. As the restaurant closed and the weight of the day began to lift, I overheard the stranger speaking with Josie, their voices low yet alive with possibility. She laughed, and with each echo I felt like maybe, just maybe, this was the moment she had been waiting for. But just as I thought things might truly change, the reality of our struggles pierced through the illusion. The stranger's phone pinged and he glanced down, a frown replacing the warmth of his gaze. He muttered something under his breath, words that sounded like "no time" and "must leave." I watched as Josie's expression flickered, confusion and renewed worry swirling in her eyes, heavy enough to silence her laughter. The man turned to her, his face shadowed. "We'll be back," he promised, but the weight of finality hung in the air. "You have something special, Josie. Don't let them take that from you." And in that brief moment, I sensed the storm brewing, a reminder that while dreams may flicker to life, they could just as easily be extinguished. As he stepped out into the evening, the door swung closed behind him, leaving Josie and me standing in the aftermath. She looked at me, searching for reassurance, but all I could see was the uncertainty coiling around her heart once more. "Do you think he'll come back?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if afraid to jinx it. But before I could answer, a commotion erupted outside, a crash of glass, followed by shouting that made our hearts plummet. My gut twisted. I felt dread creeping in, the sense that whatever was outside could unravel everything we had hoped for. I glanced toward the door, a clenched tightening in my chest. What was happening now? Would hope be snatched away just as quickly as it had appeared? The commotion outside grew louder, fragments of voices tumbling in through the restaurant door like errant shards of glass. In the midst of it all, Josie stood frozen, her eyes reflecting a sharp mix of fear and anticipation. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and I felt it echoing in the pit of my stomach like an approaching storm. "Stay here," I urged, my voice steadying as I took a step toward the door, instinct pushing me to confront the chaos. Josie's hand clutched at the counter, her knuckles white as she nervously bit her lip. "No, wait. I want to help," she insisted, swaying slightly as though about to break free from her paralysis. "Not now," I shot back, shaking my head. I stepped out into the brisk evening air, trying to steel myself for what lay beyond. What greeted me was a scene I hadn't anticipated. A small group had gathered in front of the restaurant. Two men were grappling fiercely, a few bystanders shouting, but it was the flashing lights of a police car that made my heart pound faster. I caught snippets of their conversation. A wallet had been stolen, accusations, anger. As I approached, one of the assailants broke free, darting down the street with a desperate speed that made my heart race. My eyes turned back to the chaos at hand, where the other man, panting and disheveled, was trying to explain himself to the officer. But all I could think about was Josie. I needed to get back to her to reassure her, to remind her that this night wasn't over yet. As I turned to rush back inside, the officer's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "Does anyone have any facts? We need witnesses." I hesitated, torn between the instinct to protect Josie from whatever danger lay around us and the duty to speak up, to not let fear silence the truth. I saw it happen. I finally blurted out, raising my hand to catch the officer's attention. Just as I spoke, a familiar voice broke through the din. It was Jamie. "What happened?" I turned to see him pushing through the crowd, a look of indignation waiting to unfold across his face. "I can tell you," I called, but it was as if he couldn't hear me over the shouts. I felt anger surging through me, mixing with the urgency to return to Josie. Why couldn't he see this moment wasn't about him? As I finally stepped back inside the restaurant, my heart sank. Josie was now sitting on the floor, her back against the counter, her arms wrapped around her knees. I knelt beside her, searching her face for a hint of reassurance or strength. "Hey, are you okay? Did you see who it was?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. That I shook my head, desperate to offer something more than comfort. "Just a couple of guys fighting over something stupid. It was nothing really. The police are handling it." But her eyes were glazed over, a reflection of the storm brewing within her. What if it sets us back?" she whispered, her voice thick as she voiced the underlying fear that plagued both of us. I didn't reply, wondering if the weight of it all had finally made her lose faith, if she would retreat back into that shadow self she had fought so hard against. Just then, Jamie returned with an air of triumph as he shoved the door open. "Did the cops catch that kid?" "Not that they need your commentary right now," I replied, anger spilling from me like a cracked dam. Jamie scoffed. "Someone needs to keep this place in check. What are you doing wallowing on the floor with her?" "Leave her alone," I snapped. "Can't you see how hard this is for her?" But instead of getting defensive, Josie spoke, her voice wavering with unexpected strength. "I'm okay, Jamie. Just give me a minute." It was as if the little light I had just begun to see in her flickered back to lift, defiance bubbling beneath the surface she had retained. And then, as moments passed suspended in time, the stranger's promise resurfaced. Would he really come back? Did he understand the essence of what she longed for? Lost amidst the noise? A silence settled over us, each heartbeat echoing loudly in my ears, and then a sudden breeze wafted through the split door, carrying with it the crisp scent of newfound beginnings. "Will you keep going with your dreams?" I asked her gently, desperate for a connection to this moment, to that flickering light. Josie turned, her gaze intensified. "I have to. For me." But just when I thought hope could rise again, the sound of another crash resonated from outside. A second body flung into the fray. Fear flew through me like wildfire. Had this turned into something much larger than it appeared? As the outside voices returned, taut with urgency and anger, the stranger's earlier promise echoed in my mind. But like a cruel twist of fate, Josie's phone began to vibrate relentlessly. Hesitantly, she picked it up, and I caught a glimpse of her face paling as she read. "It's him," she whispered, frozen mid-breath. "Hesh's in trouble." The gravity of her words settled firmly over us, like a weight tethering us to an uncertain future. Just as I opened my mouth to ask whom she referred to, she bolted up and headed for the door, the pull of something greater than either of us could understand. "Josie! Wait!" I cried, but she dashed outside, throwing herself into the night filled with uncertainty as the world around us shifted once more. In that moment I understood one verity. Sometimes you have to chase the light, even if it risks leading you straight into darkness. And the question hung heavily in the air: would we find hope in the chaos, or would it all come crashing down? The night loomed heavy with confusion as I rushed out the door, panic tightening my chest like a vice. The storm of voices that had once seemed distant was now a cacophony of shouts and sirens, barring my way like a giant wall. I caught a glimpse of Josie sprinting further down the block, her silhouette blurred by the bright glow of harsh streetlights. Fear clenched my gut as I pushed forward, weaving through the growing crowd, my heart racing with trepidation. "Josie!" I called, but my voice was swallowed by the chaos surrounding us. As I rounded a corner, the crowd shifted, and I spotted her talking urgently to a stranger, a man with wild eyes and erratic gestures, his face glistening with sweat as he leaned into her. My breath caught at the sight. A mix of anger and helplessness swirled inside me. Who was he? What was so urgent that it drew her into this thrumming like an open wound? I broke through a small pocket of gathered onlookers. The space opened up just enough for me to reach her. "Josie, you don't need to listen to him," I shouted, an edge of desperation creeping into my tone. The man turned at my outburst, a look of disbelief crossing his features. "She's got every right to know. Things are changing out here, and if she doesn't listen, she could lose everything." His words rang with an urgency that I hardly wanted to acknowledge. Josie turned to face me, her eyes wide, glistening with the trail of unshed tears. "He's talking about the protests, about what's going on with the movement. I can't ignore it. I want. But you're putting yourself at risk. You fought so hard to be where you are." I insisted, guilt-lacing each word. I couldn't help but feel that I should have been the one protecting her from this chaos, not being the source of her doubt. "Maybe I'm ready to take risks," she shot back, her voice raw and pleading yet fierce. The weight of her words hung in the air. I could feel the shift in her resolvian electric pulse that both thrilled and terrified me. Before I could respond, a loud bang erupted from the adjacent street, a volley of shouts erupting. People surged toward the sound, and my heart raced with the fear of losing her again. "Stay here. This is too dangerous," I urged her, reaching for her arm, but she stepped back, shaking her head resolutely. "If I back down again, I'll lose myself." "I can't do that," she breathed, the determination rooted deep in her eyes. "You don't understand what this means." All at once, the stranger, the man who had sparked this sudden fire in her, spoke again. "There's a gathering at the park right now. Josie, if you come, you can make a difference, be a voice for those who have none. You can inspire them." His words echoed deep in my mind, igniting both my fear for her safety and my profound respect for her desire to make a stand. A torrent of emotions surged through me. How could I love someone who was determined to confront the very chaos that could burn her? As I tried to collect my thoughts, Josie turned to the growing crowd of people around us, a newfound strength shining in her gaze. In that moment, something shifted. She wasn't just a girl at a restaurant anymore. She was a beacon of hope, lighting the path toward change. "But what if it all falls apart?" I questioned, my voice faltering. A moment of silence followed as she regarded me, eyes searching. "I need you to trust me, to have faith that I can do this, that I can find my voice and help others find theirs too." There was a haunting beauty in her determination, a spark that captivated me. The fervor outside beckoned her like a siren's call, pulling her towards an uncertain future. My knees felt weak as I struggled against the urge to physically pull her back into the safety of the restaurant, the shelter of our small world. And then, before I could even process the rupture of dread, a sudden crash echoed behind me as a young woman fell from the crowd, her cry silencing 1,000 voices. I watched in horror as she hit the ground, a torrent of pain flooding her features. A man nearby rushed to her side, pulling her up gently while murmurs spread like wildfire among the crowd. "Josie," I shouted in despair as I turned back to her. "This isn't safe. We can't just stand here." But she hesitated, torn between conflicting worlds, the desire for activism suffused with her apprehension about the chaos unraveling around us. A flurry of emotion played across her face, betraying the conflict raging within. Just then, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket again, breaking the tension. With shaking hands, she pulled it out, her eyes scanning the message. I recognized that look, the weight of revelation and fear crept into my chest once more. "What is it?" I asked, feeling the ground shift beneath me. It's about him," she stammered, her voice quaking. "The stranger." He's Before she could finish, a shout erupted from the crowd. The man who had been grappling with the woman on the ground was suddenly scuffling with police, smoke billowing from a nearby overturned trash can. The sight was chaotic, a window into a world that was flipping upside down. Everything within me screamed to protect her, to pull her away, but I felt the ominous grip of reality close in. I craved to see her rise like the sunrise or stand tall in defiance, but we both stood in the shadow of the storm. "Josie," I said with anguish, fear gnawing at my insides. "We need to go now. Please." But as I looked into her eyes, I saw in them a reflection of something bindless, a resolve that could tip the scales toward hope or madness. With one more glance at the unfolding chaos, her next words would change everything. I can't leave. Not now. I have to know the truth even if it shatters everything. And in that moment, just as the night continued its unraveling, her phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the pavement, the screen shattered, fractured like the world around us, and with it, everything teetered on the brink of uncertainty. Stepping away from the cacophony, I felt a sense of wretched despair wash over me as I knelt to pick up the remnants of Josie's phone, its shattered screen reflecting the chaos of the night. The symbol of her connection and our shared world was now irreparably broken, just like the trust that had begun to fracture between us. "Josie, please," I implored, my voice a mere whisper above the din of shouts and sirens. The tears glistening in her eyes were almost enough to pull me into her resolve, but an undercurrent of fear held me back. "You could get hurt. We could lose everything, the paths we've fought so hard for." She looked at me as if grappling with a force beyond her control, the uncertainty of our future swirling in the tears that pooled at the corners of her eyes. "I know," she murmured, her voice barely breaking out above the frightening noise enveloping us. "But I can't go back to the way things were. Please understand. I can feel it in my bones. This change is necessary for both of us." The stranger, still hovering nearby, took a tentative step forward, a hint of concern gleaming in his wild eyes. "She's right. If we stay hidden, nothing changes. You have a good heart, and you both can make a difference. Imagine a life where fear isn't the guiding force," he urged, his voice trembling with fervor. But all I could think about was the woman who had fallen, and whether we would be next if we moved forward. The specter of danger loomed over us, an oppressive weight I couldn't shake off. What if purpose becomes sacrifice? My voice was choked with emotion. For a moment the crowd swayed, and the presence of danger felt tangible, visceral. I could see the flames of anger igniting in the eyes of the protesters, the baleful heat of summer mixed with the chilling gust of unrest. But all I saw was Josie, a tempest brewing within her, one I didn't know how to navigate. She stepped closer, the distance between us fraught with tension. "You don't have to understand everything right now. Just trust me. Stay close." A few shouts erupted again, and I turned to the direction of the noise just in time to see a line of officers advancing toward the fringes of the agitation, holding batons with an unsettling show of force. Instinctively, I reached out for Josie's hand, not wanting to lose her in the thrumming crowd, but the connection I sought was elusive. She slipped from my grasp, drawn toward the chaos as if being magnetized by the atmosphere ablaze with defiance. "I feel it, Brian. The movement, the voices, they're calling out. Please, Josie." I stammered, desperation laced within my frantic tone. "I can see it happening. This is madness." She looked at me, her blue eyes shimmering like vulnerable glass. And in her gaze, I sensed an unfolding story hidden behind the veneer of her determination. "Sometimes madness is how change happens," she whispered. With that, she pulled away fully, joining the tide pushing forward, her silhouette melding into the chaos. I stood frozen, every part of me screaming to chase after her, to pull her back, but something held me back. Maybe it was the realization that part of Meth's selfish, protective part was rooted in a world wanting to resist change. I had always believed that staying safe meant remaining unyielding, but Josie was defying everything I'd ever known. Moments morphed into eternity as I tightened my grip on the remnants of her shattered phone, fearing that I had already lost her. With each step she took into the heart of turmoil, I felt a strange blend of admiration and despair, the burden of love swelling in my chest. And then from behind me, a low rumble of a different chaos erupted, the sound of hushed whispers, despair crowding in on us. I turned back to the crowd where people looked stricken, eyes glued to a projection screen flickering with haunting images of violence and unrest. A news report, a blaring truth that sent the invisible chill of dread cascading over us. A group of known activists involved in the protests has been targeted by law enforcement. Reports confirm an arrest warrant for a missing individual in connection to the events tonight. This desperate situation is spiraling beyond our control, the voice droned on, each syllable pushing weights of gravity tighter around my chest. "Josie," I breathed, the fear of realization crashing over me like a heavy tide. Something clicked in my mind, the news story, the urgency of her actions. She couldn't be connected to the chaos happening out there. "Did you hear that?" I called out to the crowd, my heart racing as panic tightened its grip. She might be in grave danger. In an instant, the weight of dread came crashing back down. I turned frantically, scanning faces amid the sea of confusion, desperately hoping I could catch a glimpse of her blonde curls, of the determined set of her jaw. But as I waded through the growing crowd, the passage of time felt like an eternisha twisted string binding me to the dark suspense pulsing around us. Suddenly, amidst the shouts and cries, a piercing scream sliced through the air. My breath caught as I turned my head toward the sound. My heart raced as I chased the noise with purpose, adrenaline propelling me through the chaos like a lifeline. "Josie!" I shouted again, but my voice trembled against the noise, drowning me deeper into the soul-crushing uncertainty. And then with each thundering heartbeat, the unthinkable happened. I spotted a line of officers and within their midst a struggle, a frenzied push within the crowd. Did I in that moment? My eyes widened, horror flooding my veins as I recognized the figure amidst it all, the unmistakable silhouette of Josie, surrounded by figures clad in dark uniforms, her small form being pulled away. I could hardly breathe as reality crashed into focus, as fear dripped like ice down my spine. "No!" I shouted, launching myself toward her, the world hazy and surreal. And just as I reached the thrumming heart of the crowd, something cold and hard connected with my temple, darkness looming at the edges of my vision as the ground rushed to meet me. The last image I was left with was Josie's terrified face, eyes wide and pleading, before everything dissolved into shadows, leaving hope gasping against the encroaching night. As consciousness ebbed and flowed in and out like the rise and fall of an untamed tide, I felt a pressure in my chest that echoed the chaos around me. My body lay heavy anchored to the ground, and yet my heart raced with frenetic energy. The faint sound of Josie's name echoed in the recesses of my mind as I struggled to grasp the tangled threads of my thoughts. Gradually, the din of the crowd faded, replaced by a muffled cacophony, a medley of anguished voices punctuated by cries of despair. I blinked against the stark light of the street lamps, confusion clouding my vision as I tried to make sense of what had happened. The ground seemed to vibrate beneath me, an instability that matched the turmoil in my heart. "Brian!" A voice broke through, and I realized it was the stranger from before, the one I had dismissed in my frenzy. I pulled myself to a sitting position, rubbing the back of my head where the blow had landed. "We need to move," he urged, his eyes scanning the crowd, fear etched into his features. "What? Where's Josie?" I gasped, each word weighed down by the gravity of loss. "They took her. I have to get her back." His steely resolve faltered just slightly, revealing a flicker of sympathy. "I saw them drag her away, but we can't go back. Anyone caught near that mess will be in their crosshairs too." The urgency in his tone prodded at my helplessness, drawing me back from the brink of despair. "No!" I shouted, the word tearing from me like a wounded animal. The thought of Josie trapped, alone and scared, ignited a wildfire of desperation. "I can't just leave her." "We need a plan, Brian," he insisted, shaking his head. "Rushing into danger will only make things worse. Let's regroup." As I looked past him to the turbulent crowd, the juxtaposition of fear and determination swelled around me. I could see the dim light of desperation in so many faces, people connected through a shared struggle, a shifting tide that pulled me toward its depths. Josie had always been a beacon of hope, lighting the way through darkness, and without her I felt unmoored, adrift in a sea of uncertainty and the dim light. A flicker of movement caught my eye. It was a familiar figure, hunched over a doorway across the street, cloaked in shadows. My heart skipped a beat, urging me to rise despite the weary weight of defeat pressing against me. "Wait!" I called out to the stranger, but he had already taken to the fray, moving deep into the darkening crowds. The world around me blurred into a kaleidoscope of colors as I pushed through the throng, the bile of worry rising within me. As I approached the figure, the silhouette morphed into something more recognizably a woman, her hair illuminating the darkness like spun gold. "Josie!" I gasped, instinctively rushing forward. But as I reached the doorway, the light crept in, revealing a side of her I had never seen before. She wasn't alone. She was with another, a fellow protester. A fierce-eyed woman with a steady composure that belied an intensity burning beneath her surface. They were huddled together, poring over a bundle of flyers covered with words of change etched in ink, bold and vibrant. "Brian?" Josie blinked up at me, the confusion momentarily clouding her features before determination eclipsed it. "You shouldn't be here." What is happening? I asked, breathless, my fingers twitching with a mix of dread and urgency. They took you. It wasn't safe. I thought they were looking for me, she interrupted, an unwavering flame igniting in her voice. But I won't be silenced. Not now. Not now, I echoed, my heart throbbing. You can't put yourself in danger like this. But before she could respond, the air shifted again. Menacing shadows flickered in the distance, figures obscured by the darkness, making their way down the street, flashlights cutting through the night. The collective hushed whisper of the crowd electrified the air, a tide of panic that brushed against my skin like a cold wind. We have to go, the other woman urged, tugging at Josie's arm. But Josie stood resolute, rooted deeper than the crumbling pavement beneath us. Brian, I need you to understand, she said, meeting my gaze with a power I couldn't grasp. This isn't just about me anymore. People are suffering out there. My voice can't change that if I stay hidden. A sickening twist hardened in my gut. Inside me roared the chaos of uncertainty, the reality of loss looming above like a heavy fog. But beyond that, in the light of her convictions, I glimpsed a deeper conflict of hope, the kind that sparks courage, the kind that ignites movements. Just trust me, she whispered, placing her hand on my chest, a heartbeat away from my shattered heart. We need to face this together. But I can't do it alone. Just then, a bright light speared through the nighttime gloom, a searchlight, sweeping over the street. Panic surged, and instinctively I stepped forward, my heart pounding. We can't be caught here, I said urgently. We have to leave. I won't let them take you. The words were barely spoken before it happened. The pulse of sirens, piercing the silence like a knife, echoed behind the approaching shadows. In that instant, the line between safety and chaos warped, twisted into a promise of consequences I wasn't ready to confront. Go, the other woman shouted, her voice cutting through my resolve. Now. But the part of me that longed to save Josie cried out, chaining me to the moment, to her fierce yet fragile spirit shimmering against the impending darkness. Just before the shadows spilled over the threshold, I turned to look at her, every uncertain moment crystallizing in a single breath. Do this for us, I breathed, and we'll find a way. I promise. With her eyes reflecting both fear and bravery, she let go of my palm, her spirit soaring ahead of me into the encroaching night. As the fray erupted around us, my heart clenched in terror, knowing that the world had spun beyond our control. And just as I took a step forward to follow her, that fierce sound of the sirens crescendoed, drowning my resolve, and I was ripped away, a twist of fate sealing our paths apart amid clashing realities. All I had left was the last fleeting image of her unyielding form, framed against the encroaching shadows, an ineffable promise hanging in the air, a statement of defiance and courage that would resonate long after the night swallowed everything whole. The air was thick with uncertainty, a heady mix of fear and determination that weighed down not just on my chest but across the entire neighborhood. I had always imagined standing by Josie's side when the world shifted, but never like this, never with our lives hanging in the balance like fragile glass suspended from a precipice. As the sirens shrieked closer, I froze, my feet riveted to the ground. The shadows of the oncoming figures loomed larger, and panic swirled within me, a vicious cyclone threatening to drag me into its depths. My heart raced, trying to comprehend my helplessness against the real urgency of the moment. Josie's voice echoed in my mind, a mantra pushing me to act. We need to face this together. But how could I face this at all if she was swallowed by the chaos? Brian. It was the stranger, his breathless intensity bringing me back to the present. We have to move now. He grabbed my arm, his grip firmer than I had anticipated. As he dragged me backward, I couldn't shake off the echo of Josie's unwavering words. Was I truly ready to abandon everything? To let fear dictate my path? I can't leave her, I shouted, pulling against his hold, desperation clawing at my throat. His face hardened, yet there was compassion in his gaze. And if we stay, we may lose both of you. If you care about her, we have to find a way out. I glanced back one last time, but Josie was already lost to the tides of the crowd, swallowed into the shadows like a whisper caught in a storm. My heart ached with the weight of her absence, but as the sirens grew louder, drowning out the world around us, I fired up my resolve. I had to trust her spirit. Her voice wouldn't be silenced that easily against a backdrop of chaos. We maneuvered through narrow alleys and side streets, the glow of street lamps flickering like fading stars. I felt trapped in my own head, flickers of regret clashing with hope, shadows of worry intertwining with memories of warmth, the way she smiled when she believed in something greater than herself. "Stop," the stranger said suddenly, causing my thoughts to hit a wall. I turned, looking into his frantic expression as he pointed to an abandoned storefront. "We can take refuge inside here." Without waiting for confirmation, I plunged inside, treading carefully across the debris that littered the once bustling interior, a remnant of life now dulled by the weight of the moment. The building's disarray mirrored my thoughts, the tattered edges of dreams laid bare as realities shifted beyond recognition. We took position behind a dusty counter, hearts pounding in unified rhythm. As we peered out of the cracked windows, the streets were alive with movement, shadows twisting and shifting like elements dancing to chaos score. I searched desperately for signs of her, but the swarm obscured everything. All I glimpsed was the cruel punishment of urgency embraced by so many longing for change. "Who are you?" I suddenly realized I hadn't allowed myself to ask what I should have after this encounter began. "Why are you helping me?" He turned slightly, his jaw tense as he focused on the street outside. "My name is Leo," he replied, voice steady despite the tumult enveloping us. "I lost people too. When you care about someone, you can't just stand by and watch them get hurt." A swell of understanding surged within me, melting away some of the ice that had gripped my heart. "We're fighting for something somewhere," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "It was never about just Josie, it's about all of us." "Exactly." Anguish flickered in his eyes as he continued to survey what lay beyond our fragile haven. "But if they catch us, we'll never make it to see that. We need to regroup. If we can't save her now, we have to plan for later." His words sought to anchor me, though they draped with shadowy undertones. There was an inherent understanding of loss in the moment, and the uncertainty of hope battling despair. But through that darkness, embers flickered, tiny glimmers igniting ideas, and what had felt so shrouded became clearer. We could still fight. I couldn't give in to fear. I had to gather strength for her sake. A flicker of resolute anger burned within. This wouldn't be Josie's last stand. I wouldn't accept that. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed closer, heavy boots on the cracked sidewalk. I held my breath, my heart slamming against my rib cage, every instinct whispering for us to hide. Leo's tense demeanor warned of the danger, that palpable current swirling in the atmosphere. Bristling with weight, peering through a gap in the boarded-up window, I squinted against the dim light to catch a glimpse of figures moving methodically through the streets, seemingly searching for something or someone. "They're here," Leo hissed, adrenaline fueling his urgency. "We need to stay quiet." And just as the words escaped him, a light from one of the figures swept across the storefront, cutting into our shadows. My breath caught in my throat, a searing reminder of what was at stake, of who was missing. But in the sudden silence that enveloped us, an unexpected realization seized me. There in the distance, through the swirling shadows of despair, I glimpsed something, a flutter of movement. "Josie!" I gasped, exhilaration surging through me. The figure was holding a sign, its words barely decipherable, but they glinted with a promise of change. Off relentless spirit, undeterred by fear. It wasn't just a call to action. It was an unwavering light, a reminder that her voice could still echo, even if the night sought to absorb her entirely. My pulse quickened, heart jumping as I turned back to Leo, a fierce determination crashing over me. "We need to help her. She can't do this alone." But before I could take a step toward the door, Leo placed a hand on my shoulder, halting my resolve again. "Brian, wait. You need to think. We can't just rush out there." Just then there was a crunch of glass underfoot. The figure outside turned, face illuminated momentarily by the glow of the streetlights, and in that instant, recognition gripped my heart. It wasn't just Josie standing there. It was someone I had never expected, a familiar face I thought was miles away. Yet here she was, staring back at me from the veil of chaos with wide eyes. And her presence burned with questions. What had she done to end up here, entangled in this chaos? The realization hit with overwhelming force, a shocking disruption to the frantic rhythm of possibility. Just as quickly, fear slithered in. What did this mean for all of us? And with that, everything teetered on the edge of calamity once more. My heart suspended in precarious uncertainty, knowing our paths had converged again, yet not knowing how deeply entwined they had become. The air trembled with anticipation as I stared at the familiar face illuminated in the streetlight's glow. It was Amanda, a friend from my pasta connection I had abandoned during my chasing shadows with Josie. Her eyes met mine, and in that electrifying moment, A rush of memories surged like a tide, threatening to pull me under. "Amanda!" I exclaimed, my voice cracking. I felt a draping cloak of guilt descend over me, each encounter leading to the loss of her trust and support. Until now, that chapter of my life was a faint echo, dismissed for the sake of a singular mission. "What are you doing here?" I asked, urgency flooding my tone as I edged closer to the cracked glass. She wasn't alone. A group flanked her, faces masked with resolve, their sigils emblazoned with symbols of change. They were a defiant pulse of hope in this environment swathed with turmoil. "We heard about what's been happening. We're here to fight," she said, though her gaze flickered toward the deeper shadows as if afraid of what lurked there. I couldn't grasp the intensity of her determination in this instant, but it soothed my chaotic heart, whispering of newfound alliances and shared battles. "You shouldn't be here, it's too dangerous," I said, the weight of my decade-old decisions crashing into present responsibility. Did I owe her my protection after casting her aside in pursuit of other dreams? "A dangerous world calls for desperate measures," she responded, a spark igniting within her. I couldn't sit back when I knew I might be able to help. I felt Leo's hand tighten on my shoulder, anchoring me amidst shifting tides of nostalgia and desperation. "If they're here, we can regroup, figure this out together," he urged, the wisdom of experience littering his tone. "We need to open the door, get them inside, away from the light." I hesitated, a flood of thoughts washing over me. Did I want to draw more people into this chaos? This was my fight for Josie, my chance to reclaim everything. Yet here was a reminder of the connections I had severed in a chase of single-minded purpose. But as Amanda nodded toward me, the urgency in her expression was palpable. She was willing to risk everything for something that barely existed while cloaked in fear. And all of that energy streamed into a singular truth: she had always been there. A quiet fixture in my history, holding my hand even when I didn't appreciate her presence. With a resolve echoing greater than worry, I swung open the creaking door, the gust of stale air rushing past us like a messenger of the unknown. "Come in quickly." As they ducked inside, Leo and I exchanged glances, unity unfurling amidst our camaraderie. This battle wasn't just mine anymore. It was morphing into something far more profound, a collaborative fight against despair and uncertainty. The storefront felt crowded but alive, the flickering tension shifting as whispers of shared passions transformed into tangible strategies and ideas. Amanda stood closer, her warm presence wrapping around my heart, offering a tether to the choice I had made to reconnect with those I had pushed away. "We need to create a distraction," she suggested, a bright smile breaking through the stress of the moment. "Draw them away? But how?" I asked, yet my heart was already racing toward visions of action. "Let's use the storms of chaos. We can deploy nonviolent resistance change mechanisms to pave way. If we can just buy time, we'll have a chance to locate Josie." As they rallied together, swirling with fervor that erased our differences, the shadows receded like empty echoes. Every thought of abandonment dissolved further as I found solace in shared purpose, and in time, hope whispered amidst the flickering uncertainty. We formulated a plan, my heart sinking to the pulse of our united stance. Laughter and anxious murmurs crisscrossed with bursts of ideas, animating the air brimming with anxious energy. But just as we began to excel in our collective courage, a loud crash interrupted our momentum. A heavy thud echoed from above as if resonating from a gut of the world. Security alarms pierced the air, blaring warning sirens that signaled a rapid escalation on the streets outside, and panic threatened to claw its way back under our skin. "What now?" Leo asked, his voice darkened with concern. I turned toward Amanda again, her expression hardened, yet steadfast, the fire of determination etched in her eyes. "We stand together. We became more than ourselves the moment we united. We've come too far to turn back now." Suddenly, the door rattled violently, slamming against the frame as shadows encroached upon our space like a creeping fog, the light from the outside extinguished by looming figures. I clutched the edges of the counter, heart pounding as terror intertwined with a fierce defiance. We couldn't give in. We couldn't be crushed beneath the weight of fear. Just then, as I caught my breath, a sound caught my ear, a voice I knew all too well, rising above the chaos and shouts. "Brian!" It cut through the onslaught, sharp and clear, echoed like a beacon amidst the darkness. In that voice resided uncertainty and a horizon of despair, but it also held the promise of connection. a tether pulling me back toward reality even amongst the shadowed despair. "Josie," I cried, each syllable a desperate plea laced with hope. "Where are you?" she yelled, urgency threading her voice, growing closer. Just like that, the world tilted dangerously, wondering how much more chaos would be unleashed as we braced for what lay ahead. The thin line between safety and despair hung in a delicate balance, teetering on the precipice of resolution, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was holding its breath, waiting to reveal its next move. The walls of the storefront trembled as alarm bells blared through the air, warping the atmosphere around us into sheer panic. I blinked in disbelief, still grappling with the urgency of Josie's voice echoing through my mind. "Where are you?" It struck a chord deep within, unleashing emotions that had remained bottled up, wrapped in layers of guilt and regret. Leo's hand found mine, his grip a melding of reassurance and urgency. The shadows loomed closer, urging us to act swiftly. "We can't stay here. We have to find her," he urged, a fierce determination igniting in his eyes. "Amanda," I shouted, turning to face her. She was already moving, central in a whirl of focus, her brow furrowed with resolve. "What's the plan? We need to create a diversion," she called back, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. "If we can draw them away long enough for you to get to Josie, it's worth the risk." Taking a moment to gather my racing thoughts, I nodded at the group around us. "We need to split up. Some of you stay here with Amanda and create the distraction. I can't lose her again. I have to reach Josie." Just then, the door shuddered violently as if rattling in protest to our intentions. A sense of urgency thrummed through the air as Amanda looked at me, her expression a captivating blend of fear and fierce loyalty. "Well, hold the line. You go. Let's do this," Leo asserted, trading looks with Amanda before giving me a firm nod. "Well, hold them off, just find her." As they began to scatter, some to barricade the entrance, others to set traps using the remnants of the merchandise, my heart raced with trepidation. I gathered my breath, steeling myself for the unknown that awaited beyond the door. With a final glance back, I burst through the entrance, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. The streets thrummed with chaos, the sound of smashing glass and raised voices intertwining with sirens as shadows moved in disarray. Each step felt like a reluctant plunge into the deep, where danger lurked, but the echo of Josie's voice propelled me forward. The alleyways felt alive with shadows, twisting and turning as if they were leading me astray. I sprinted toward the last place I had seen her, my heart hammering with panic. The faint hope that surged earlier now fought against the coils of dread grasping at my throat. "Josie!" I shouted again, desperation bleeding into my voice. The din of the fight was deafening, but I refused to yield to the overwhelming tide. Rounding a corner, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a familiar figure amid the chaos. Brian. It was her. Josie stood at the edge of a confrontation, flanked by a group I had never seen before, their faces determined yet tinged with fear. For a moment time stretched and wobbled, the world narrowing down to the sight of her. Her hair whipped in the wind, her eyes locked onto mine with a fire that felt like the sun breaking through the storm. "Get back!" she screamed at menacing figures approaching with anger etched in their movements. "You don't know what you're doing." My pulse quickened. "Josie! I'm here!" I cried, pushing through the press of bodies toward her. The crowd surged, violent and unyielding, drawing danger closer as stakes escalated with each passing second. Just as I reached her, I felt a pull around my chest, an overwhelming heaviness anchoring me back. The thrumming chaos resonated in my chest like an out-of-tune instrument as I strained to break free to her side. "Brian, this isn't what you think," she implored, her voice puncturing the frantic facade of the moment. "We can't just rush in. There's more at stake than you realize. They're not just angry, they're desperate." "What do you mean?" I managed to say, breathless as I scanned the faces before me. Each person bore a unique weariness, stories carved deeply into their skin, and I realized they were not merely adversaries but products of a cruel world. Grappling with their own losses before she could respond, the shadows lunged forward, crowding us in a crushing wave. Everything obscured. Screams and sounds melded into a jarring cacophony. But in that chaos, Josie's hand found mine, our fingers entwined like fortresses built against everything threatening to divide us. Suddenly, a flash of light ignited the darkness, followed by a thunderous burst that echoed across the alley. The ground shook as a hollow explosion erupted, sending debris flying in every direction. The cacophony swallowed the chaos, instantly signaling a slew of screams resonating from both sides, the combatants caught in a sudden moment of frenzy. "Get down!" Josie shouted, pulling me down just in time as we ducked beneath a shattered awning, shrouded in confusing debris and sudden darkness. My heart raced, throwing me into survival mode amidst panic and adrenaline. "Are you okay?" I asked breathlessly, peering into her eyes, the desperation and intent mingled within them a lifeline. "Not for long," she muttered, glancing around for an escape route. "They're getting restless. This is a setup. They want us back in the fight." A sinking realization washed over me, tugging at the threads of our newfound connection. In the abyss of our world, the lines of right and wrong had blurred. Alliances formed in the shadows, and yet here we were clutching onto the mere notion of hope amidst the despair. "Let's find a way out," I said, my voice steady against the onslaught. "We will be better than this chaos. We can be better." But just then, a dark figure loomed over us, shivering with an intensity that chilled my spine. It was a face I knew well, marked by years of shared memories and scars of betrayal. Well, what do we have here? It was Reynolds, the very man I thought I left behind, but here he was, eyes glittering with malice. The world around us seemed to halt as shock rippled through me, uncertainty poisoning the air. His arrival threatened to shatter the fragile flicker of hope we had fought so hard to reclaim, leaving us one breath away from the precipice of despair, and retreating wasn't an option anymore. Emotion clawed at my throat as I faced Reynolds, the weight of our shared history suddenly too heavy to bear. Behind his casual demeanor lay the sadistic glee of someone who thrived in chaos. Josie stood beside me, a trembling leaf in the storm, her hand still clutched tightly in mine, grounding me amid the tumult. "What do you want?" I demanded, the bravado in my voice concealing the turbulence within. "Want? Oh, I just want to watch how this little dance unfolds," he replied, eyes glinting with a predatory excitement. "You two thought you could slip away from the chains of fate. But look at you now, caught in the fire you ignited. You don't know anything about us," Josie shouted, her fear morphing into ferocity. "We're fighting for change. For something bigger than you." My heart swelled with pride, even as desperation flickered at the edges. This was the spirit I had fought so hard to protect. Reynolds stepped closer, inches from us now, an insidious smile creeping onto his face. "Change? You naive children think you can serve a light greater than yourself? Look around you. Lives are being destroyed in moments, and for what? Your little dream." My mind raced. The figures behind him surged forward, shadows eclipsing our space. Reynolds had a network, allies who saw us as fodder for the chaos, unwitting pawns in someone else's game. And yet we stood rooted to the spot. "Fight it," I said softly to Josie, willing strength into her through our connection. Our fingers interlaced like a sacred promise, merging darkness with the flicker of hope that ignited between us. But Reynolds, sensing our hesitation, laughed bitterly. "Look at you both, I can practically taste the fear. The moment you doubt yourselves is the moment you fail. The world is cruel. You should know that by now." "Cruelty doesn't define us," Josie said, her voice strong against the onslaught of dread swirling around us. "We choose our path." With a sudden motion, Reynolds lunged, reaching to separate us. In that instant, something fierce and primal surged within me. I couldn't let him fracture us, couldn't watch helplessly as fear snatched away our spark. "No," I shouted, stepping forward, shielding Josie with my body. I wasn't just fighting for us, I was fighting for everyone who had been silenced, for every laugh that deserved to roam free. Grit crashed against my soul with a powerful realization. This was more than just a confrontation. It was a chance to reclaim our identities in this tumultuous world. "Take her," Reynolds barked, gesturing violently at the crowd. Shadows writhed, ready to pounce, but I felt something shift inside me, a growing clarity that reshaped fear into strength. "Back down." I resonated, our voices harmonizing into a singular force, fueled by every sacrifice made by Josie, by the people we both cared for deeply. Josie's eyes met mine, a potent storm of fear and bravery. Together, she whispered, steel threading through her voice. "No more hiding." I nodded. We weren't leaving anything behind, no regrets, no doubts. Just us in this fight together, defying everything Reynolds stood for. United in purpose, our shadows intertwined, becoming a force neither fear nor chaos could extinguish. "Leave now while you can." Reynolds barked, but his authority faltered before the intensity of our connection. Let's show them what change looks like, I said, our hands tightening in unison. With a fierce shout we surged forward, drawing upon the energy of our love and passion. The air crackled around us, an electric spark igniting hope in the wake of despair. The tide of our shared purpose ignited enthusiasm among fellow protesters, echoing like an unstoppable wave through the crowd. The uprising wasn't about our fight against Reynolds alone. It wasn't just a singular clash, it was a wildfire forged by collective voices pulsating in solidarity, demanding change, refusing to succumb to the shadows that threatened to drown us. A chorus of chants erupted from the crowd, a rallying call that resonated through the chaos. We rise together. We fight together. In this whirlpool of determination, my heart ached against uncertainty buoyed by the righteous fervor echoing around us. Just then, a flash of recognition crossed Josie's face, her eyes alight. The shield! She yelled, pointing toward a barricade where people were forming a collective wall against oppression. Yes, I shouted back, enthusiasm surging through me like wildfire. Let's become that wall. Together we reached the barricade, a surge of bodies uniting to create a forceful barrier against the dark tide dawning beyond. The energy around us transformed like fuel igniting a fire, disbelief morphing into action. Our collective cries merged into a choir of defiance, swelling across the nighttime air, strong enough to pierce through the chaotic tides threatening to consume us. And in that moment, amidst the fray and the crumbling edifice of fear, I caught a glimpse of the stranger Lila, his face ablaze with hope, signaling that together we were more than capable of defiance. Shadows, masked by their anger, quaked at the foundation of our conviction, and for the first time, I allowed a flicker of belief to swell, confirming that we could rise, that together, we could shatter the chains that bound us. But just as it seemed clarity would engulf the darkness entirely, Reynolds's voice pierced through the air, slicing through our echoing cries. You think you're invincible? You're nothing but pawns, easily crushed. Wildness surged within me, but I looked at Josie. She was unflinching, resolutely determined. Then it's time to change the game, she cried, her spirit resonating in every word. In that moment everything coalesced: the struggle, the pain, the losses transforming within the unity of voices that demanded change. We would not wither away under the weight of despair. We would rise unyielding, and that resolve bolstered my heart until nothing else mattered but this fight, this moment. Through swirling chaos and bending shadows, we would not falter. We embraced vulnerability as our power, a force igniting unquenchable flames. The wall grew stronger with each person making it their own, holding fast even as Reynolds lurked with menace at the edges. And as everything erupted into a cacophony, a thunderous blend of voices, defiance, and determination, I felt a shift within me, an opening that whispered, "This is more than a moment, it was our legacy." An embodiment of love nestled amidst the storms. It was happening, would rewrite our narrative. Power surged through the connection we forged, an indelible bond against the fading light of the past. Through everything we faced, we would transform sorrow into strength, and fear into liberation. With all the conviction in my heart, I pressed onward, sharper than the chaos seeking to blind us. This moment held only one truth, and it burned brightly within. Together we could pave a different path, one kissed by the sun, where laughter thrived unhindered and the echoes of our spirit would resonate long after the darkness settled. This was not just the end of a battle, it was the beginning of hope. And as we locked eyes, I knew deep down that nothing could take away that which we had reclaimed: the resilience of love, the fire of defiance, and an unrelenting spirit that whispered, "We are more than the shadows." And that was enough to ignite the spark within our hearts. Because we would rise together. We would always rise together.